So I've been commissioned by the RSU to speak on I put it as the history of the People's Revolution in Nepal, since that's what after 1990, they engage in an event that they call Jana Andolan, which is known as the People's Movement. So, you know, obviously they're communists, but the name of this is People's Revolution in Nepal. Just a quick preamble. There's a context to all history, and on my point of view, I should be clear as to my methodology. This history is not complete in most senses of the word. This is not to say that it's been purposely included, but in fact we need to include things as a matter of pragmatics. Thus, we choose and make these choices that we do, whether we know it or not, to determine how history is judged and ipso facto our instrumentality of it. I want to tell the history of Nepal that buries us with details of every occurrence so that we drown in an ocean of facts, which most are irrelevant or distracting. In writing this presentation, I can't help but think of Nietzsche's contemplation of history in his essay on the advantage and disadvantage of history for life. We need to engage in a particular type of history. The type of history forthcoming aims not to be monumental recollection of heroic events, nor a history whose end is presented as an already foregone conclusion that mummifies the living in the name of the past. Rather, we need to engage in a critical history. As such, I've chosen the valorous struggles of the downtrodden peoples of Nepal. This isn't to say that I've taken entries out of the illiterate peasants' journals. History will be presented as it comes from reports of newspapers, reports of humanitarian organizations, and other officials' places of notary. I will present them chronologically as faithfully as possible, giving exposition to contextualize and connect the relevance of these events. By these, I think we can augur the diverse peoples of Nepal's struggles. We will see that history is taken from these sources show a history of class struggle. When I use the word people, it should be immediately apparent that it is a somewhat ambiguous choice. It is not the entirety of the Nepali people that suffer from history's progress. Of course, you'll see standard binaries, kings and subjects, men and women, rich versus poor, in short, haves versus have-nots. But we also observe things that appear uncommon to us, like people repressed in the hierarchy of a Hindu caste, like the struggles of the untouchables known as the Dalits, as well as others. As we traverse the Nepalese people struggle, we could easily identify three major stages. The first is the formation of the Kingdom of Nepal to the overthrow of the Rana line, the second being the kingly reinstatement of the modern advancements until the last stage, which should probably be delineated as the start of Jana Andolan, or the People's Movement. So I'm going to try to go a little bit faster through the parts before Jana Andolan, just for the sake of speeding up. So in 1768, Prithvi Narayan Shah of the Gorkha dynasty forms three kingdoms that officially becomes what is vaguely recognizable as Nepal. You may be familiar with the word Gorkha because Gorkha soldiers are something that persists through our culture, at least ethnically, even though they are from Nepal, as sort of fierce soldiers and things like this. They come from this kingdom. They came from sort of a warrior leader caste, which is not unlike the connections to its Hindu caste system. 1815, Nepal goes to battle with the British India East Company and fought over the small bordering provinces on the Nepal-Indian border, specifically in the Talrai region. There we go. There we go. They fought very fiercely. This is where Gorkhas got their, sort of reputation. The British East Indian Company underestimated their warcraft and basically got their butt kicked, and then they came back and strong and more powerful forces and also had guns and things like this, and eventually won. And they lost the Talrai region. This is known as the Gorgo-Shah line, and in 1846, the ruling class of royal and military fight amongst themselves for power over the country, resulting in the Kop massacre, which amounts to a slaughter of a lot of royal family and other royally appointed figures. As one may or may not imagine, in India and Southeast Asia, there's, especially among royal lines, tons of wives and tons of kids, and there's lots of infighting, but then in addition to that, the Hindu caste system has royalty, military class, religious leaders like Brahmins and things like this, and there's all sorts of infighting that goes on as a result of this. And I think even if you look at the CIA World Book, I think Nepal is actually officially put as a Hindu nation. And if it isn't now, it was forever. I mean, it was officially the only Hindu nation. I mean, that even includes India. So Hinduism has its extreme influences, and of course, it's infighting. As a result of this, the Gokar royal line was sacked and was replaced with the military. Young Bahadur Rana, who made the king relegated leader and replaced him with a new de facto king post called Prime Minister, which is a powerful and hereditary position in the Rana line. It starts the Rana lineage. The Rana dynasty was a pro-British monarchy and helped in the repression of Indian rebellions, and were awarded the Talrai region in 1857, which they lost in the battle to them previously. Skip ahead a little bit here. The British Empire in 1923, after World War I, and their help in World War I, awards them their own sort of statehood, pretty much because the British Empire didn't find it necessary for them to not be officially autonomous, so that they can just get what they want from them anyway. It's also about this time, in 1923, in 1924, slavery is abolished as a progressive reform. 91 years later, it's formally banned throughout most of the British Empire. I don't know the conditions behind this. I get the impression that the pressures that amount behind this were sort of liberal reforms that were going on after World War I. Of course, you have the formation of the League of Nations, and that all the empires are being, pressured to release their empires, and they don't want to do this and things like this, and so, they give Nepal their formal clearance, and then they're like, oh, maybe you should roll back slavery, which is something we should have done with you 91 years ago, but here it is anyway. Things don't really improve for the people living underneath of the Rana line. They're a highly militaristic sort of class, and in addition to that, they're not particularly nice or do any sort of power sharing or are interested in the liberal reforms. So, I'm even a little surprised to see this in 1924. As early as 1930, dissident groups were forming. There was a group called the Praja Parishad, who gained support from the formal king of the Gorkha dynasty that has been relegated. His name at this time was King Trupavan, in the overthrow of Rana rule. So the idea was that, the king would enact all these liberal reforms and things like this that everybody's getting very excited about. Here we can briefly glimpse into the tension struggles occurring between the Shah line of kings and the Rana monarchical ministership. August 15th, 1947 marks the date of legal statehood in the Republic of India as an entity away from the British Empire. There we go.